And when you think about supercompensation, which is just this effect of more recovery while maintaining intensity, that's what tapering is all about, where you're really getting this bump in fitness at the right time.
And the improvements are more like in the 2 or 3% range. You're not going up 10% because you've tapered. That's just not how this works. Nobody gains 10% in 2 weeks, period. Unless, well, I guess maybe you do some other stuff that's, we'll say, frowned upon and or illegal, illicit, etc.
Got the feeling in your bones, make you feel right at home. Honey, does it well, keep me dancing till I'm dead. 'Cause I could run a mile like this, head over heels feels like this. The sun has got me on my track, I ain't never looking back. I ain't looking back. I ain't looking back. I ain't looking back. I ain't looking back.
Hello and welcome to the Apex Coaching Reach Your Apex podcast, featuring coaches and athletes discussing our knowledge and experience of relevant topics to help you improve your health, fitness, and performance. We're coming to you from Boulder, Colorado, and all around the world. I'm Neal Henderson, and I'm here with Zach, Greg, and today we're going to be talking about event week planning.
Yeah, athletes spend so much time, energy, and money preparing for these events. And what we see is that this last week is when they mess it up. So it's a little frustrating, and it's a topic that's super timely for us as coaches. So we're going to dive in. We're going to make sure that you don't screw it up on the week of your event.
There's so many things that we do as coaches in that final race week, and so many times it's about trying to make sure the athlete doesn't make bad choices here. And hopefully we're going to give you some information to help you make good choices and have your best possible race, because you've invested a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money, and you don't want to throw that all away with doing some silly things race week, right?
I used to have a checklist that had shoes, nutrition, and all these like simple things on it. And I would just check them off as I threw them in my car. And I think we've leveled up since then, and we're going to start checking off days of the week and what's important to eat and when to rest and when to push again. But I think it all starts with just a plan.
Yes, the checklist still can be useful. I, in fact, yesterday had set up scheduled a ride to meet with some of the athletes I coach. I arrived sans my cycling shoes. And I missed more than half of the planned ride with them because I had to drive back, pick up my shoes, drive to meet them, which they're fast. And so I ended up driving for like an hour and a half instead of extra hour and a half of riding. Sad face for Neal.
Yeah, it's brutal. I didn't want to rat you out, but I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Because it's just one of those things, right? And it's if you don't pay attention to every little detail, something will miss. And fortunately, it was a training ride and not a big, important race that you were training for.
30 years on, I'm still learning a few of these lessons. So hopefully you're going to take away some things that we've made many mistakes ourselves. We've seen other people make some mistakes, and hopefully we'll be able to shortcut things and not get you in that same place of saying, oh no.
Yeah, so let's dive in. Let's talk about Monday. So if you're racing on a Saturday or Sunday, like what are we thinking about at the beginning of the week?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is adjusting your training in that week is really important. Most of us kind of have some sort of a rhythm in training, and we might have a training schedule. We might have specific plans that we do certain things on certain days. A lot of us do work in some way, Monday through Friday or some other work schedule. And so we have to have a reality-based, Monday through Sunday. Now, Zach, you and I both coach some athletes that kind of have full schedule exclusively devoted to training and racing. That elite professional might have a slightly different thing. Like sometimes they don't even know what day it is. I can tell you in the middle of a grand tour, there's yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And you kind of get lost of where you are physically in the world and where in time and space you are at as well.
Yeah, but I think we're talking about the people that need to clock in today, right?
Yep. And so in that way, early in the week, we're going to assume that your event is happening on the weekend, typically a Saturday or Sunday, or maybe even Saturday and Sunday in some cases, or even more. But generally, for a weekend event, you want to think about resting early in the week. So that Monday, Tuesday especially are great days potentially to take completely off or to be doing significantly less and even lighter training those days.
Yeah, and I think this might be something that people get a little bit sideways, right? Where they're thinking about resting on Thursday and Friday. And when we talk about adaptation and all these things that happen in your body, taking rest right before you're going to go super, super hard is kind of counterintuitive because your body's not going to hold on to all the things that make you a great cyclist if you're not cycling.
Yeah, I sometimes talk about training kind of like we're driving down the highway and we're rolling along, kind of fast and we need to rest. And that's going to be like turning off on an exit and going to the gas station and refueling and doing all the stuff you need to do. As you start driving back onto the highway, a lot of times like you don't feel as good. The car is kind of like, and it takes a little time to get back up to speed and everything kind of back in the rhythm. And so training is kind of like that. So if you are shutting down your training and resting right before you want to be going at your absolute top speed, a lot of times what's going to happen is you're resting and then you come to the event and you feel really rusty. You don't feel ready to go because you haven't actually gotten the engine warmed up and running enough.
Yeah, and so sometimes it ends up that we do openers or, even a longer ride the day or two before an event. And maybe that seems a little counterintuitive, but you gotta test it and trust us on this that you need those efforts in the legs the day before an event.
Shutting it down right before is probably the worst thing you can do. And so there are studies out there talking about, tapering, which we're going to have an entire episode on tapering. But generally, tapering is more than just a couple-day process. This is a several-week process. And this is when you're coming for your absolute highest priority events where you want to have the absolute best relative rest. You have to have had blocks of training, weeks and months building up where then an effective tapering is going to typically be maybe 2-ish weeks. And that second week before the event, you're already dropping by 30 or 40% your total volume, still maintaining intensity. That's, again, one of the other mistakes people make is they start pulling back on some of the top end work, and then the race week can be dropped another, massive amount. 40 to 60% of their normal training is reduced in terms of volume. So you can think of that as hours, but you're still maintaining frequency and also intensity in that kind of a taper over those longer couple weeks for a major event.
And when you think about supercompensation, which is just this effect of more recovery while maintaining intensity, that's what tapering is all about, where you're really getting this bump in fitness at the right time.
And the improvements are more like in the 2 or 3% range. You're not going up 10% because you've tapered. That's just not how this works. Nobody gains 10% in 2 weeks, period. Unless, I guess maybe you do some other stuff that's we'll say frowned upon and or illegal, illicit, etc.
Yeah, we'll have to come back for that part of our pacing plan. But if you expect 10%, you're probably not going to get it.
Yeah. 2 or 3% is kind of the improvement that you get. So even if it's not a major event, though, if you have, a B level, let's just say A, B, and C, or, highest, medium, and low priority, even a lower medium priority, you still want to do some less training earlier in the week and roll up into the event.
And I guess the last point on that is that racing is great training. So being well prepared and giving it your all, even if it's not the most important event for you, is going to help inform all of these decision-making processes for that key event. And it can give you the fitness bump that you're looking for that you can't get in training because you just don't push as hard when you don't have a number pinned on.
So one of the other things then is that rest, even if it's a low priority event, is you're going to be able to do the most work you possibly can in that lower priority event and be able to have then that best bump in your fitness from the work you do there. Because if you come into even a low priority event fully tired or not adjusting your training at all, you're not going to be able to push as hard there and you're not going to get as much out of that low priority event.
And executing on those days is so informative. And we always talk about going in with a plan. And so I think that logistics planning is a huge part of executing on race day. And that starts on Monday too.
Yes, there are many different aspects on the logistics. So depending on the event and where it is happening, you might have travel as a significant factor. It might be a small factor. If it's a local race where you get to sleep in your own bed the night before, awesome, easy, smooth. If it's something across the country, totally a different ballgame. If you're driving, if you're flying, if it's an international race and you're crossing many time zones, that travel can be a major, major factor there. And a travel day, like especially international travel, even if you're not training, is not a rest day, is it?
It's unbelievable what travel days can do to your body. And we say that there is no such thing as an easy travel day, especially when you're getting on a plane. And there's so many factors that kind of go into that. Being around a ton of people in an airport or in a busy kind of metro area can lead you to picking up something, whether it's a germ or just getting a little bit off your rhythm with nutrition or hydration. And it can really impact later in the week how you feel.
The germ tube, as we call airplanes, good idea to use a mask there. Traveling doesn't matter what your thoughts and beliefs are. Germs don't care what you believe in or not. And so that helps you stay a little bit healthier more often. Also in an airplane, it's actually pressurized to just a moderate elevation like the new super planes. You're at about maybe 4,000 to 5,000 feet of elevation and the air is very dry. If you're in an older plane, you're more at like 6,500 feet of elevation is all that it's pressurized to. So you're actually, if you're in a long, 12-hour international flight, you're going to be spending a lot of time at altitude, in fact. And so your hydration needs are significantly elevated, just like if you're at a terrestrial actual elevation.
That conditioned air in an airplane can dry out those mucous membranes, as well as just dehydrate you and can cause some issues with immunity or just feeling like crud once you hop off that plane for sure.
Yep. And if you're doing a long drive, same thing like you would in a long plane ride, using stuff like compression socks and getting up and moving around is really important, not just from your performance side and helping your legs feel good once you arrive, but actually from a health consequence. There's some real risk, especially post-event. If you've gone really hard and pushed yourself, that actually not having that blood flow and things like that in the lower limbs can actually lead to some pretty scary medical consequences.
It's a big deal. And I think one of the tips is get an aisle seat. You don't got to sit with your buddy, but you do need to get up and move around and be able to do that comfortably without feeling like you're inconveniencing someone else.
After travel, let's assume everything has gone maybe not easy, but smooth, if you're lucky. We have equipment issues, which again, if you're traveling, there's a whole nother side of potentially tearing down bikes or putting them in travel cases and all that. But on the equipment front, what are some of the key things you think about, Zach?
I think we work back from the goal. What bike are you racing? What are the conditions on the road? I think gravel has come so far in that you need tire selections based on weather and the speed of the group and your own capabilities and thinking about that days and weeks ahead so that your wheels are set up correctly or your drivetrain is set up and you have options for more climbing or descending or whatever it is. And then, if you are hopping on a plane or going on a long trip, making sure that all of that is packed and available and you know how to make those mechanical adjustments yourself. There's a lot to it.
Yeah. If you fly to some foreign destination and they don't have a lot of mechanical support and you have a super fancy bike that you've never actually yourself taken apart, adjusted brakes, adjusted your shifting, you are at risk of having problems. So making sure you know a lot about your bike before you travel, definitely super useful. Even if you're just driving to a race, bringing your stuff along, knowing how to manage little issues that might come up is super useful. Some other things, if you go back to our episode 3 that Andre and I were talking about some of these skills and prep for events as well, we do mention all the different tire type, pressure, experimenting in some of your major training events leading into it to make sure that you got everything dialed, that you're not doing anything new on race day. All of the things that you're going to be employing on race day, whether it's equipment and or nutrition, you should have already had some experience with, whether it was in a lower priority event or in a training session.
And really bring extras, buy extras. The bending of a derailleur hanger can ruin an entire weekend if you don't have an extra one. With our whole goal of maximizing your chances for success on race week, it comes down to planning every little detail and being a little bit maybe negative in your thinking of what all could go wrong and just bringing extra stuff.
Having a plan then for success. If this happens, then that. So we use a lot of different apps a lot of times for some of this because there's weather aspects of things like that, but we use Strava, we use VeloViewer, we use mywindsock.com, Epic Ride Weather, any other ones that you're using?
Windy is also a great one to check out.
Yeah, and all of these are, not all of them, but some portions of them are looking at the weather and the forecast and what predicted winds are and things like that. The course itself, how steep certain sections of the course are, so we have the right gearing. That's all part of it. And then from that, I have my equipment, but I might also have different tire options just in case it changes, because again, if you're traveling several days out from the event, well, the weather forecast from 5 days ago does not always hold true. Oh, it was supposed to be dry and now there's a deluge, or it's supposed to be muddy and now it's like absolutely hard packed on a gravel situation. That's going to be totally different tires to optimize your performance. So having and bringing those options would be really helpful.
And like you talked about on episode 3, understanding the demands of your event is so important to success. So it can help dictate the nutrition that you bring, because 100 miles could be 4.5 hours or it could be 7.5 hours. And really knowing your own capacity and how you're going to ride the course can dictate what you bring on your ride.
Yes, having what you're used to as well, knowing, again, we talked about this in episode 3, like what's available on course, but a lot of times it's a good idea to bring a lot of your own stuff just in case. Sometimes I've arrived at an aid station and they're not set up or they're already out of everything. Either case, you're in trouble. And if you have no backup plan, if you didn't bring a little bit extra yourself, well, good luck.
And that planning extends to before and after. I think relying on hotel breakfast can set people up for failure. Or even the day before, when you are doing these big travel days, you still have to hit the carbohydrate demands for a pre-race day, which are substantial. We're talking 10 to 14 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram body weight. That is 2,000 calories of carbs at least when you're talking about fueling and preparing for these big epic rides that you're doing. So having that in your car is almost essential, because you can't get that at a gas station.
Not that amount. We actually learned this with our athletes in 2016 when we were working with our team pursuit program, and we were actually using the muscle sound, which is an ultrasound for looking at muscle glycogen levels. And we found the biggest changes occurred on travel days, not on any of the training days that we did. The biggest drop in muscle glycogen from one day to the next was not a day where there was a 5-hour ride or a day with 2 training sessions on the track with high intensity VO2 max intervals. None of that had near the impact as the travel day, just because of the disruption and eating schedule. And so we started having everyone pack basically like 1,500 calorie extra carbohydrate that they were eating then on those flights, because that fueling aspect, if you're already behind the 8 ball when you arrive, in a couple days, you're typically not going to be able to right the ship, we'll say. Can't get it caught all back up in that short period of time.
I always say you've got to think like a bodybuilder. You can't miss meals. And really that comes down to packing big old bowls of rice or cereal or whatever it takes.
Whatever works for you. Again, and you're bringing and eating things in those days leading up to the event and during the event that you have already used. Not the newest, coolest thing that you found at the expo the day before that's promised to bump you by whatever, 10% or some kind of crazy promise out there. Nothing new on race day. I'm going to repeat it one more time.
And it bears repeating again and again. And when we're talking about the breakfast for race day and these carbohydrate considerations, we're also talking between 2 and 4 grams per kilogram for breakfast. So if you're trying to do that with oatmeal, it's going to be a lot of oatmeal.
How many packs did you bring?
Exactly. Bagels, whatever it is, you're looking for things with high density of carbohydrate. So one of the things that we bring as an emergency fuel is cream of rice. Because in a big packet, it makes pretty concentrated goop, and you can get your 2 to 4 grams a kilogram that digests really quickly without having to rely on hotel breakfast at all.
Yes. Last December, actually, I went to a race and traveled. It was a late arrival. We had delays, of course, and I knew I was cutting it close anytime. Anyway, with the way that I booked the travel, I made some tactical decisions. I almost paid a price, but fortunately did arrive with my bike about 10 p.m. the night before the race. I had to be up at about 4:30. I think there was a 6 o'clock check-in, and lo and behold, of course, the hotel breakfast doesn't open until 6 a.m. and I had to already be elsewhere by that point. So fortunately, in my little bag of tricks, my backpack, which maybe we'll do an episode on what's in my backpack, I had multiple packs of oatmeal. I had my almond butter. I had instant coffee. All I had to do was heat up the water. I had a couple bars. I had everything I needed with me in the quote unquote just in case scenario. And I used all the just in case stuff and it worked out.
And it's so cool because once you know and understand what the requirements are for your success, it's on you to figure out how to do it. So the instant oatmeal and all those things are so important to keep with you. And really, the third key point of being successful on race day is not talking or thinking yourself out of a successful day. So what mental skills or visualization methods are you encouraging people to use so that they don't overthink and under race?
Mental training skills are a huge part of this, and you need to start before race day. If you're just waiting to have mental strength on race day because you're tough, well, yeah, that's not going to work. So some of the things early in the week, you have visualization, seeing yourself doing exactly what you want to do in a positive way. It doesn't have to be a 30-minute crazy long, going through the entire event or, an 8-hour Ironman visualization. Probably. I wouldn't recommend it. I've heard of people doing something like that. Wouldn't do it myself. Having though 5, 10, 15-minute periods of time where you can just sit somewhere quiet, close your eyes, and see yourself kind of from that third person position, or kind of imagine like a drone camera, I think would probably be an apt current day way of thinking of this. But you executing what you plan on doing, seeing yourself doing it in that way, even in this imaginary way. Yeah, visualization is an imaginary thing, but your body and your brain don't necessarily know that. There's actually cool old research on like shooting baskets and having a group that just visualized shooting and another group actually shooting. And the group that was just visualizing actually, I think, had slightly better shooting performance than those who were shooting the same amount of time. Pretty wild.
And really, for those of us that race on the road or these mixed surfaces, like Google Street View has your course in it for the most part. And so timing your attacks or understanding what parts of the course are really hard and being able to find landmarkers and really prepare yourself so that there's no surprises out there, or there are minimal surprises, is so important. And one of the big things I always tell people with visualization is you have to visualize it being really difficult, because it is. What you're doing is hard. And that's one of the reasons that you do it. So being prepared for those tough moments, whether they're big climbs or they're mechanical issues, is so worth the effort so that you're more relaxed when they occur on race day.
Yeah, I can't say enough about that course type preview, the Google Earth, whatever. If you can't physically get there, if you can't drive the course or those kind of things, you can get some idea, especially where certain turns are. Getting those landmarks, as Zach said, is so helpful. Another skill set is actually relaxing. In most cases during a race week, you have maybe a little more time on your hand than usual. You're training a little bit less. And so being able to just stay relaxed and not just fill that void of time with more movement. A lot of us are fairly driven to just keep doing things. And I've heard and seen athletes in taper weeks make really big mistakes, and they have a ton of energy and they spend it poorly. There's a story of an elite runner who during a taper just decided to take on a massive landscaping project in the backyard because he had plenty of time and energy to do so, and ended up getting a pretty significant injury that kind of was, we'll call it ergolytic. It did not improve his performance, as you can imagine.
Yikes. Yeah, I think with extra time comes the ability to self-sabotage.
So things that you can do to relax. You can read a book. That's a good thing. I've had a lot of athletes in race week where we have certain tapering and reduced training days that I send them to a movie. I know it's going to take a little bit of time to get there. Maybe it's a 2, who knows, lots of these epic long movies now, closer to 3 hours. We have like 4 hours of time then to get there, see the movie, sit there doing nothing, which is great. You're kind of relaxing generally. I mean, maybe some movies more so than others. But it's definitely a reduced demand that gives you, like, it creates a passive relaxation.
Nice. That's a great idea. And it kind of gives you a break from the there's always more to do part of this, right? Because we're always thinking of what's the worst case or what else do we need to pack and prepare for. But just having some time, and you can really look forward to this during those true taper a race week blocks of having a little bit extra time to do things that you don't normally have time to do.
Breathing exercises are great, and there's box breathing. You can look some of these things up. There's different ways of going through and just setting aside a few minutes. It doesn't have to be, again, going to a movie theater or starting to finding a book and reading a book. It can be some simple things where you set aside 5 or 10 minutes just to work on your breathing and even meditation or trying that. Not a bad idea. In this, you can also start to add in some of your positive self-talk. Mantras, sometimes, are these repeating phrases that you can just pull on while you're in the event. You might be in a difficult place, and having something positive that you say right there can make a huge difference.
That's a great point. And back to the third person way of thinking, they've shown that talking to yourself in the third person and cheering yourself on from that perspective is so much more effective.
You've got this.
You've got this.
Simple things. I've heard of different stories, but yes, a positive thing. Just saying yes is one of those things that is a positive self-talk. You can say it out loud even. It's not a crazy thing to see an athlete in a performance like saying something to themselves. This is actually a pretty normal occurrence with a lot of high-level elite performers.
Yeah, we'll have to give a shout out to a few like heavy talkers sometimes, but seeing it in a race and seeing the impact that it can have is just pretty amazing. So being positive, but also being prepared to be positive, I think is a really important part of this. So practicing it, using it for your intervals when things get a little bit dark on the road, like having that space to say, no, I've got this is super, super important.
And even though we're talking about a lot of positive things here, positive self-talk and having visualization of everything going well, you also need to do a little bit of, say, catastrophe mitigation, having plans of what happens if. How do you manage if you have a flat tire? Do you have all the equipment? Do you know how to actually take your wheel off? Do you have all the stuff with you on your bike or on your person so that you can fix an issue? And going through that, again, kind of mentally preparing, you might even need to physically do things sometimes and realize, oh, geez, I took off my flat kit because I thought it was going to be saving weight or be more aero, But if you get a flat, well, it's a lot slower to either not be able to finish or have to ride a flat.
Yeah, that's our version of shooting baskets from your living room, right? Where it's just so important to understand the flow and the process behind fixing catastrophe, or even when you're in a situation where you're crashing. Understanding how to crash is such an important skill, and it's something that you can visualize or you can look up some videos on, and hopefully it doesn't happen, but the way to protect yourself during these events is something that you can practice.
Hope is not a strategy.
Yeah.
Zach, I say that often, but having some plans for if things aren't going well, aren't going right, how do you make the adjustment? The ability to focus is important, but the ability to refocus and adapt and adjust is critical to your performance over time, because not everything is going to be rainbows and unicorns out there every day.
Absolutely. Well, great. No, thanks. This has been so informative, and I do think we can wrap up maybe and blitz through a Monday through Sunday on this. So, what are we doing at the beginning of the week again?
Monday, Tuesday, really reducing training, maybe even complete rest. Starting on the logistics planning a little bit, if we need any equipment adjustments or new things that we have to test out, getting them ordered, installed, etc. in the beginning of the week so that we can do a little bit of riding with that set up on, say then, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, with some efforts in there, some intensity, definitely important. And then starting to look towards the weekend forecast and making some adjustments in those couple days as well. And plans, not just awareness, but planning. If this, then that.
Your first, second, and third look at the weather on the first, second, and third app on your phone.
Each day.
Going to the grocery store, having your Instacart ready if you're flying somewhere, all of those things, so that when you have boots on the ground and it's go time, you don't have anything to worry about.
Checking that list, making sure you got everything in there, not forgetting anything, like your cycling shoes.
And then taking the moment to mentally prepare. You can use YouTube videos. A lot of these courses have been used several times. And visualizing, staying calm, not overthinking things, but feeling like you're super prepared for everything, including catastrophe.
Last couple days, so say Friday, Saturday, if it's a Sunday event, what are your keys?
Don't KOM the shakeout ride.
I've seen that way too often. Setting the KOM or power PR of the year on Saturday for Sunday's race is usually not ideal.
And then focusing on food and fueling and making sure that you hit your carbohydrate goals so that you're not sabotaging race day energy levels.
Perfect. So those three things, again, tapering and adjusting training, big picture, having your logistics planned out, and having that mental preparation and those skills sharp, honed, and ready for action are your kind of key three things on race week. Well, that is a wrap for this episode of the Reach Your Apex podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We're here on YouTube Podcasts, Spotify, and iTunes Podcasts. You can also connect with us on our social accounts on Blue Sky, Threads, Facebook, and Instagram at Apex Coaching Co. for more endurance insights and training tips.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend who's chasing their own peak performance. And of course, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a new drop. Until next time, keep pushing your limits and striving to reach your own apex.
Looking